Lauren Davis, and today we're going to be discussing your all's 2019 financial plan. So let's get started. In the way of our firm philosophy, we really emphasize your family's personal values while we're developing your financial plan. Also, we do our own research through third-party investment sources to help us develop your investment analysis. With that, we truly value open communication and want you guys to feel empowered with financial knowledge to go through and live a stress-free life. Today we're going to be discussing your family's financial goals, assumptions that we use during the development of your cash management, risk management, retirement planning, investment analysis, and tax and estate planning throughout this portfolio. It's going to be a fun ride. Let's do this thing. This is your all's information that we utilize during this planning process. Ryan is self-employed, working in print services, and Rachel recently graduated and now is a dental hygienist. She's been in the field for about 12 years, but she's new to this being a dental hygienist. And Ryan has actually been in the field for 19 years, and so he's confident in his job stability as well as Rachel. And you guys both have 3 children, and one has indicated wanting to get a master's, whereas the other 2 are too young to indicate their plans. So here we're going to highlight the financial goals that we focused on during this portfolio. Obviously retirement, you all are looking to retire at around 65, but withdraw Social Security at the full retirement age of 67. In the way of needs, we understand Rachel has a heart condition, and so we definitely built the plan around having safety nets and ensuring there were funds to be able to pay for a possible procedure or something in the next 5 to 10 years, because you all mentioned that. In the way of wants, you're looking to pay for or provide money and funding for your children's weddings, mission trips, and graduation gifts, or graduation trips, Also, another want is possibly purchasing a new home or just remodeling your current home. And then also you indicated that you're interested in providing funding for your grandchildren's high school graduation gifts as well. We won't go through and read this slide in detail, but basically it just highlights the assumptions that we made during this process in the way of inflation and interest rates and things of that nature. This is another slide we won't go through in great detail, but this is simply just the statement of cash flows and the statement of net worth that we created for you all. And again, these statements and these graphs and forms throughout this whole slideshow are provided in the portfolio that we'll give you. But one thing with the statement of net worth, we use the information that we have, but we would like to kind of discuss any assets and other things you guys have to possibly add to this, or to make it a bit more accurate. Again, with open communication, we really value that, so we want to make sure that we have all the information that we can get on you all. Now we're going to discuss a few ratios based on your all's financials. So liquidity ratio actually takes your liquid assets and divides it by your monthly expenses, and kind of tells us the ease with which your assets can be converted to cash, meaning how long can your household expenses continue to be paid off if cash inflow stopped, so if someone lost their job. And we typically like to have about 6 months of leeway, and your all's ratio falls between our 3 to 6 recommendations, so we'll continue to work on that, but for now we're comfortable with that. Also, the tax burden ratio for you all is about 22%, which is reasonable as it compares income and property taxes to your gross salary, so it kind of looks at the amount of your household salary that goes towards taxes, and so 22% is good. The housing expense ratio compares housing costs, such as maintenance and utilities, to your gross pre-tax salary, and then that kind of lets us see your ability to pay your mortgage debt. And we suggest that you should be around below 30%, and you guys are 23%, so that's good. The following 4 ratios are a bit walk-jaw, for lack of better terms, because you all just purchased a house, which is totally fine because we have time to kind of work, and hopefully with our cash or our budget and our investment plans for you guys, it'll help to build these ratios back up from that current expense or that recent expense of buying a house. This slide highlights your all's budget and a suggested budget that we've kind of adjusted for you guys. And for the sake of time, we can't go through, unfortunately, right now, line by line to discuss any specific adjustments, but we did want to highlight the fact that we adjusted groceries over the years for the fact that children will be moving out, and so as each child move out, we slowly deducted a bit because you'll have less mouths to feed. You'll also notice that healthcare is zero in our suggested budget, the healthcare expense, and that's because it's an HSA account, and that's actually withdrawn from Ryan's paycheck already, so we don't need to reduce that expense again. And then the mortgage and rent, we just adjusted that amount based on the pay stub, or I'm sorry, not the pay stub, the mortgage statement. So actually, you all provided us the value of $1,765, and for the first 9 years, it's actually $1,788, but then it decreases for the next 20 years to $1,689. And then cable and satellite, that's something we can discuss. We didn't know if you guys were willing to adjust that at all, because if you perhaps bought a Fire Stick, you might be able to not pay for that if you have an Amazon Prime account. But again, these are all things that we can discuss in another meeting that maybe isn't 15 minutes long. But you will find this page in the appendix and discussed in detail in the portfolio workbook that we provide you guys. So as we were examining the budget, some children received a bit more money than others, and we didn't know if this was a concern for you guys, but if it is, we just wanted to use this slide to highlight possible suggestions as to when you could maybe try to balance everything out, because we know how things can get sometimes when kids are comparing, oh, you got this much. So just to alleviate that, if you all are concerned about that, this slide just suggests perhaps Kayla is getting married in 2025, obviously that date can change, but you could add $1,000 but set it aside in 2024, because based on your budget you will have more funding in 2024 to maybe set that aside. But again, we can discuss this. This is just a suggestion. This is simply a timeline that highlights your expenses into retirement, leading up to retirement. But then we want to highlight that your mortgage will actually continue 4 years into retirement. We're now going to go over a brief overview of your risk management section. So with homeowners insurance, it's automatically rolled into your house payment, and we didn't know your current insurance, but HO2 is a great policy because it's a broad form policy, which has a cost-efficient deductible and has a variety of named perils that we think would suffice for you all in home insurance. In the way of auto insurance, the state required minimum in Utah is $25, $65, $15, so we suggest perhaps looking at that and maybe bundling both of your vehicles and home insurance under one policy, as well as possibly raising the deductible on auto coverage to lower your premium, which is your monthly payment. And then with life insurance, Ryan has his employer-provided policy of $250,000, and because of Rachel's heart condition, she can only get a smaller amount, which is only $25,000 for her spouse, Ryan, but we suggest that you guys maintain that because it is very important. Neither of you have disability insurance, but we would ask Ryan to look and see if his employer offers it, and then also Rachel, we could look at that option through the American Dental Hygiene Association. With long-term care, we understand this is a high concern with Rachel's heart condition, so we could consider a joint long-term care plan, and then possibly have a plan that offers or that accounts for inflation. That way you'll have lower out-of-pocket future costs. And then with health insurance, we want to maintain Ryan's 80-20 employer coverage, and then as each child is employed, we might be able to roll them off and then perhaps lower the cost of that health insurance as they get health insurance from their employers. In the way of retirement, you all have no preference who retires first. You guys are healthy, have an average life expectancy, and look to retire at 65. And then you also have indicated your goals and expenses to us, as you can see on this table, and they are actually in order of importance. So the top three being mortgage, Rachel's heart condition, and the couple mission. With Rachel's heart condition, that was an estimate, and also the year that it occurred, you'll see that that was also an estimate that can be adjusted and changed as we discuss and figure things out. Now we're going to discuss your all's retirement funding accounts. So Ryan has a 401k that is a tax-deferred investment vehicle, which is great. So because it has this preferential tax treatment, we're going to go ahead and put lower efficiency tax investments in in his 401k. And it is employer provided, meaning it has a match of 60% of his income, so they provide a 50% match, and we definitely want him to continue maxing that out so he's not turning down free money. Also, there's an HSA, an employer-provided HSA account, which we want you guys to continue contributing into because this could double as a retirement account. But for Rachel's heart condition, it's great because you can withdraw for qualified medical expenses tax-free, but then anything not withdrawn will continue to grow in that account and then can be withdrawn similar to an IRA at retirement at 65. We want to open a traditional IRA for Rachel because the contributions are tax deductible, and we're also going to diversify the investments in order to generate maximum return within that account. And there's already a savings account that a portion of Ryan's paycheck is being allocated to, and we're not going to invest any of those funds because that's going to act as an emergency fund for possible medical expenses and other things down the road. Your Social Security benefits will also go towards funding your retirement goals. You guys indicated that you don't mind withdrawing at the full Social Security age of 67, although you want to retire at 65. And we actually calculated higher values than your Social Security statement provided, and we primarily think that, especially Rachel's higher value, is attributed to the fact that she has more money due to her new job. And then below that, you'll see that this chart highlights the longer that you wait to withdraw this amount, the greater the amount will be. And so that's something we can discuss if you guys want to perhaps wait until age 70 to withdraw. We can discuss that. Based on your income and budget, we were able to calculate the amount that you guys can invest annually, and this is including the additional amount of discretionary funding that you included while we were working on this portfolio. And then with the 2019 contributions, you'll notice that amount does total up to $4,800, with your HSA and IRA being funded by $2,000 apiece, and your 401k continuing to have the max amount placed within it. And then your savings account, we do want you to continue to invest in that as it will increase your liquidity as well as provide a safety net and emergency fund for you guys. Now we're moving on to the investment analysis. Because you guys are long-term investors and focused on retirement, we really want to focus on capital accumulation and growth with your portfolio. Your time horizon, like I said, is long-term. In the way of liquidity needs, similar to what we mentioned earlier, we want to make sure you have at least 6 months of cash reserve. And your risk tolerance, as you mentioned in the workbook, was around 50, which is moderately willing to take on risk. But because you guys have a longer time frame and amount of time to be invested, this will help smooth out your portfolio as well as asset or portfolio diversification. And so with this long-term goal, we encourage you guys to have a bit less conservative portfolio at the beginning, and then we'll shift to more and more conservative. But this way we'll have higher risk, but that generates more return, which you can read about in your portfolio. Asset allocation decisions are very important in portfolios as they determine 90% of the variability as opposed to only 10% being determined by the security selection. And so as you can see in this image, we really like to choose a variety of assets that are well diversified in order to balance out any fluctuations within those assets. So the purple portfolio line is y'all's portfolio that is smoothed out because of the variety of assets that we have you all invested in. We're going to slowly alter your distribution of assets from higher risk investments to lower risk investments as you approach retirement in order to ensure that we don't invest you in something really risky right before you retire, because that's not going to be the best thing to generate return. Although, high risk, high return. So with that being said, you'll notice right now you're at 80% equity and 20% fixed income and cash. And that will shift into less equity and more fixed income to increase the safe, conservative options. But as you get older and enter retirement around 85 and towards your older years, we're going to slowly start to reallocate it back towards a bit riskier investments because in your older years you can withstand a bit more risk. And we'll see where we are at that point, but that's something that we, as the firm, definitely look into. This slide breaks down the investments within your portfolio, so you can see you have 80% within equity, 12% within fixed income, 5% in REITs, which is real estate investments, and about 3% in cash. Your total portfolio return is about 7.88, and if you look below that, you can see the rate of return for each of the other investments, such as large cap funds. We primarily use ETFs as investment vehicles because capital gain taxes are only realized when the investment's sold. So you'll notice with your investments in equities, bonds, and even REITs, those are ETFs, ranging from investment brokers such as Vanguard to Schwab. You guys are currently married filing joint and are currently claiming your children, and we encourage you all to continue to do that until they graduate. Other deductions include Rachel's student loans, your HSA and IRA account, charitable contributions to your church, and possibly contributions to Goodwill, as well as travel to and from work. In the way of estate planning, you guys have indicated that you have a low degree of concern in the way of leaving money to others, and your current assets look to be, or seem to be, your truck and investment assets, is what you put on your workbook. So we want to work with you guys to develop an estate plan, and maybe one that will benefit your children or the church. And we also want you guys to create a living will, power of attorney for healthcare and financial matters, as well as review the beneficiaries on your insurance policies and adjust it if it needs to be towards your spouse or children, or just to make sure that's right, because especially after Ryan's divorce, we want to make sure everything is allocated and the beneficiaries are the right people. And then also we understand that you guys have a will created, and we might look into that. And with that being said, both tax and estate planning can be, we encourage you guys to speak with a CPA and professional estate planner to help with this. Thank you so much for listening today, and please remember that we value open communication and are here to answer any of your questions. Also, you'll be provided with a portfolio binder that has all of the information, calculations, and detailed explanations of everything we discuss here today. Thank you again. Bye-bye.